All right, hello class. Good to see you all here today. Today we are going to be discussing the topic of teaching, editing, and revision for the academic and creative writer. So the first thing that I want to do is open up class with a brief exercise. So what I would like you guys to do is give me the words that you were thinking about before class. We had the question that we were answering up here on the board when you walked in. But to repeat that, we're just looking for words you would use to describe revision to a student. So what are some words that you guys thought of?
Editing or reworking.
Nightmare.
Okay.
Second chances.
Okay. Those are all good things to describe it. So our learning outcome for today is that you guys are going to be able to, by the end of class, compare differences in the methods of teaching revision for academic versus creative writing. And then we're going to do a little exercise at the end to critique your own approach to teaching revision for areas of improvement. So keep those words you gave in mind. All right, so we're going to start with a definition of revision. So revision is a rewriting procedure, like some of you noted. As Paul Williams says in his article, Teaching Bad Writing, to write well often means that you need to write badly first. But if we're going to write badly first, we need a way to fix it so that the audience is getting something that is usable to them and that expresses exactly what we wanted it to say. Revision is our way of doing that because it allows us to reword, rewrite, and redefine our ideas until we have something that does accurately express those ideas. So that means that this is one of the most important aspects of teaching writing that we can focus on. So we're going to start out with discussing revision processes for creative writing. We're going to start out with, first of all, multimodality as a method to improve revision. So according to Catherine Batchelor, who is a researcher and instructor who uses multimodality in the classroom, that is the use of multiple modes of communication to help students to recast complex ideas into other forms, such as writing. The methods can include anything from music to math, and it's especially powerful as a method of revision for creative writers because it allows our students to examine first draft ideas in light of other mediums. So methods that we might implement this within the classroom include creating a drawing of some integral idea from their story or their piece, or even using household objects to create 3D art to represent elements of the work. So this can work for any type of creative writing, really, from short stories to journal entries. Students who have been interviewed and studied throughout this process have noted that it helped them to concretize the ideas that were in that rough draft, and then when they took that to the revision process, it brought to light details that they otherwise wouldn't have thought of. The second thing we need to make sure we are doing is stressing what revision is and is not in a creative writing context. So the first thing that we can focus on is making sure that our students understand that, like some of us said here, it's a rewriting procedure, not fixing errors. Obviously, fixing errors comes along with rewriting, but that shouldn't be the focus. The focus is on our ideas and how do we rewrite the piece so that it is expressing exactly what we meant it to express. We should also be stressing that not only is it about revising our ideas so that we're expressing them clearly, but it is also about seeing the subject more clearly ourselves and learning how we can say what we have to say more beautifully. The way that that may be more beautiful depends on the piece, but the goal is to say it and express it more clearly and beautifully. And then we also want to make sure that they understand this is an ongoing journey of discovery. Your rough draft is the final point in the journey, but the journey itself is really what matters. Obviously, we're going to be grading that final result, but we want them to understand revision is part of that journey, not just something you do so that you can have the final draft to turn in. So then when we're talking about academic writing, obviously that varies a great deal from creative writing, so it shouldn't be any surprise that our revision procedures also vary. Multimodality can still be useful, but oftentimes when we're looking at academic writing, it's not nearly as useful. It is not necessarily well suited to teaching revision for students in this area. So again, we're going to have two different things that we really need to focus on when we're teaching revision. The first thing is we want to encourage revision beyond proofreading. Now, I know we discussed this briefly with creative writers, but with creative writers, a lot of times, they already come to the process understanding this process of revision is me struggling for the right word to express what I want to say. So they already have an idea that revision is about their ideas, not just fixing some grammar. Academic writers don't necessarily come to it in that perspective unless they also are doing creative writing. So we want to make sure that they understand that revision is about their thoughts and ideas, not them fixing a comma here or there. That is not revision, that's proofreading. So we want to make sure that they understand the difference between those two. Now, many of the researchers that have studied this area promote the idea of free writing because it encourages students to put their thoughts down in any form that comes naturally to them within the time period allotted, and then to explore their ideas through writing, rather than simply writing for the audience right away. This stresses the idea that revision is important because it shows them your initial outpouring of ideas didn't necessarily fit well with what your audience is going to need. But you've got the ideas out there. So now that you have ideas out there on the page, how do we take what you initially had and turn that into something that your audience can use? So it really helps them to understand in a concrete way that you start with the ideas, you revise it, and you work with it, and you critically assess your work during that revision process to express the ideas clearly in your final form. It's a concrete way for us to represent to the student the way in which revision is that rewriting and ideas-oriented process. The second thing that we're going to want to do is stress individualized approaches. It's really, really easy for us as instructors to get into the thought process that we want to teach students the step-by-step method for how you write a paper or how you write an essay or whatever they need to be writing. The problem with this is that not every student's going to work well within that structure. It's great for a starting point. It's wonderful for helping them to understand one way that we can approach writing a paper, but not every student is going to do well with an outline. And if they don't, that's fine. We need to make sure that, yes, we are teaching them methods of how to go about writing their paper, but at the end of the day, we need to help them to focus on how they get from point A to point B in expressing their ideas clearly. And if that means that they need a more fluid process and they don't need to use the outline or they need to jump between different points for how they think, that's fine. We want them to do what will work for them in order to express their ideas the best that they can. So, why does this matter? To bring this full circle, we need to consider that because it affects why do we care about teaching it this way. So first of all, our approach to teaching revision is going to inform how our students understand writing. It's going to either encourage them to think of writing as, this is just me doing this for a grade, and I want to get it done as fast as possible, and yeah, revision is important, the teacher says, but really it's only about fixing a few errors here and there. They're going to focus on that method as being basically skills focused. So they're going to focus on their grammar, their proofreading, their sentence structure. Or, if we're teaching it properly, then they're going to learn that writing is about the discipline of expressing ourselves and our thoughts through written words in a way that's both clear and beautiful. Revision has a great deal to do with how students feel about the writing process as a discipline and as a process. We're either going to encourage them to have a holistic, in-depth view of revision by teaching them that idea that rewriting is improving the expression of ideas, or we're going to encourage a shallow view that sees revision as just fixing the paper. So it's vital that we're making sure that as teachers we're putting the emphasis where it belongs in writing, on the ideas, if we want students to develop that holistic view. So, in order to help us to do that, we're going to do one final exercise to critique our approach. I want you guys to think about those words that you started out with when we began the class. And I want you to think about the material we've just gone over. Have any of those words that you would have used to describe writing to the students at the beginning of the class changed? And going forward, what are some ways that you might change your approach to teaching revision in the future based off of the material that we have discussed?
Well, it's not editing, but rewriting is still a good description of it.
I would agree with that. Anybody else have anything else they want to share?
Well, it doesn't have to be a disaster or discouraging and thinking you did terrible the first time. It's just trying to turn it around and put new ideas with what you already put together and increase those ideas.
Right.
To make them
Hopefully
better,
it will avoid them feeling
improve
like
them.
it's a nightmare.
Right.
Does anybody else have anything they want to add? quiet in the back of the classroom there, anything that you have that you feel, even if it's minor, you would want to change?
I had a word and I don't remember my new word.
That's okay, it could just be a
Oh.
method.
Improvements. I would change the word to improvements. Because it's kind of still a second chance. It's like a second chance to make improvements.
Right, it's kind of moving along in the process and it's not necessarily you're stuck with whatever you had at the beginning. Okay, those are all good ways that we can think about improving our process. So I think that's it for this class today, guys. Thank you so much for participating and helping out here. And I will see everybody next time.